In a parallel universe, astronauts during deep space missions enter into induced comas, transferring their consciousness into mechanical replicas of themselves that are still on Earth. Jesse and David are part of one such mission. David is a talented painter as well as an astronaut, enjoying a luxurious home and lifestyle in California with his wife and 2 kids, while Jesse, also a family man, lives an isolated and mundane life in a beautiful farm deep into the forest. The duo is enjoying their daily routine until they get a beeping notification through their watches and proceed to connect with high-tech futuristic chairs. Within seconds, waking up in their spaceship cabins. Next, they meet up in the control room, where David discovers that a crack in the solar coating has caused the alarm, and some minor maintenance needs to be performed. Jesse puts on a spacesuit and tactfully repairs the damage, as David mostly monitors the situation. Having dealt with the emergency, the two engage in some small talk. David points out his surprise with Jesse's wife adapting to the countryside lifestyle, but Jesse, somewhat annoyed, responds that he has misjudged her. The two say goodbye. They then both reconnect to their mechanical selves and go back to their family lives. Jesse finds his wife on their bed, reading and complaining about being too secluded. Meanwhile, David has woken up in his California mansion to the unsettling sounds of intruders. Without alerting his family or calling the cops, he grabs a baseball bat and goes on to investigate, finding a group of hippies menacingly trying to contain their laughter. The leader of the gang mocks David and his beautiful home, while the rest excitedly surround and disarm him, literally, before threatening his family and bashing his head with a hammer. David reawakens in the space station and panically reconnects to his replica, which is now tied on his couch in front of his wife and kids. The wife is pleading with the hippie leader to spare the children, but it turns out the group has the worst of intentions, considering him an abomination and her with the kids accomplices that have to be punished for defying nature itself. They then go on to brutally torture and kill the whole family, finishing by setting David's replica on fire. A few hours later, Jesse receives a phone call from NASA informing him of the tragedy. He immediately disconnects from his machine self and goes to check on David, who is in complete shock. Jesse tries to console him, but he is unreachable, so he leaves him alone. Back on Earth, Jesse discusses the situation with his wife, Lana, noting that since David's Neuralink is destroyed, he will be mostly alone for the remaining 4 years of the expedition. And coping with grief, he could potentially endanger their mission. Months pass by. David is struggling with trauma and a monotonous routine of disgusting food and loneliness, while Jesse enjoys with his family their rural retreat, unplugging only once a week to perform his physical and to run the appropriate maintenance tests, ensuring the proper function of the ship. One day, while teaching his son how to fish, Jesse's watch starts to beep, notifying him of a potential emergency aboard the ship. Jesse hurries back to his post, finding David alone in the decompression chamber, spaced out of his mind. Jesse eventually gets him to respond, but he is unable to shake the impression that David was about to kill himself. Jesse shares his concerns with Lana, reminding her that the situation gets increasingly dangerous for him as well as David, since he wouldn't be able to operate the ship on his own, let alone complete their mission. Lana suggests letting David connect to his own replica, arguing that the fresh air and change of scenery could be therapeutic, and Jesse reluctantly agrees. During their next routine checks, he gets further convinced by witnessing the deteriorating state of his crewmate, finally making the suggestion to David, who is quietly thrilled with the idea. Jesse connects one last time before David, preparing his wife that he is about to come. Following that, David nervously makes the link, stumbling onto the stairs due to the new proportions of his body, and saying hi to Lana, that offers to show him the forest. David is mesmerized with the beauty of the abundant nature and the multiple sensations that he had almost forgotten about. However, it's not long before he remembers his murdered family, breaking down in tears, while Lana hugs him. Afterward, David disconnects from Jesse's replica, thanking him for the gesture, seeming somewhat refreshed, yet tinged with a hint of envy. Jesse gets back home, where he discusses their interaction with Lana, getting surprised that David wept in front of her, but remaining unaware of the fact that she hugged him. Days later, after completing their physical exam, David shows to Jesse a cunningly accurate drawing of his house front. Encouraged by Jesse's surprise at his talent, he indirectly asks to use his replica again by offering to paint him a much more impressive piece, supposedly as a thank you gift. Jesse talks it over with his wife, both agreeing to 1-hour visits every 7 days. Weeks start to fly by, but as David inhabiting Jesse's body slowly progresses on his painting, Lana spends more and more time with him, seemingly charmed by the much more cultured version of her husband. Instigated by her attention, David starts teaching her how to draw, in addition to being less and less thankful to Jesse, who is completely unaware of their growing intimacy. One day, having ran out of some needed material, David asks Lana to drive Jesse's car to a nearby town shop, and she agrees to escort him. After getting there, he pushes her boundaries even further, suggesting a visit at a nearby bookstore, where he offers a book recommendation. However, the bookkeeper, recognizing the astronaut's replica, mentions the murder of David's family. Minutes later, Lana makes some more physical contact, attempting to console him, and following his disconnection from Jesse's link, David continues a drawing of her in his space cabin. During the next session, Lana notices that David has added her to the painting. As she gets distracted examining the new detail, David uses the chance to put on a romantic song and ask her for a dance. Lana starts enjoying herself, emboldening David to finally make his move, blatantly groping and kissing Lana, who is receptive at first, but eventually pulls away and rushes back at the house with David running behind her. Having caught up, he escalates further, urging her to confess that she deep down wants this, and retrying the groping routine. But this time, she outright rejects him, accusing him of trying to confuse her with gifts and romantic music while wearing her husband as a suit. David, perplexed by her reaction, doesn't call her a whore, but notes that she is too good for Jesse and that she knows it. Lana vehemently denies his assumptions, and frustrated, David goes back to his painting, only to discover that Jesse's son has messed up part of it. David smacks the little kid in the head, forcing Lana to demand that he disconnects. Hours later, Lana and Jesse are arguing, but only about the incident regarding the kid, since Lana has once again omitted to mention David's attempts at intimacy. Jesse is on the side of David, pointing out he himself has struck his kid hundreds of times, and that the situation actually warranted it, reassuring her that it will be 2 more visits tops before David actually finishes his piece. Another week goes by, but this time, upon David's arrival, Lana announces that she will be leaving with her son for the evening. Meanwhile, Jesse wanders into David's cabin, where he finds naked drawings of his wife, finally catching up with what is happening. Using the emergency alarm on their watches, Jesse confronts David, who argues that they are just a product of an innocent fantasy, but mistakenly adding he can't help himself when his wife is so beautiful. Jesse responds with a punch and relogs to his machine to have a chat with Lana. She lies, denying having done anything with David, but admits to being untouched, unsatisfied, and lonely. Jesse is surprisingly understanding, hugging his wife, convinced that it was actually his fault all along. Next week, after their physical exam, David apologizes to Jesse and asks to use his link again in order to say goodbye to Lana. Jesse initially ignores him, but David pushes further, begging Jesse to show some understanding and reminding him that he has literally nothing left. Furious at the man's nerve, Jesse gets aggressive, taunting David, lying that his presence offends and disgusts Lana, while also promising that he will never see or speak with her again. A few days later, Jesse gets the emergency notification on his watch. After unplugging, David notifies him of heavily damaged equipment that needs to be repaired, so Jesse dons the spacesuit and ventures outside. Nevertheless, he gradually realizes that the suspected equipment is actually intact. Anxiously, he tries to contact David, who is unresponsive. Now panicking, he hurries back at the hatch, which he starts smashing while screaming at his comms. Minutes later, the hatch door does open, and David greets him, using the discreet excuse of being at the bathroom. However, after getting undressed, Jesse realizes that David used his replica link during the spacewalk. With a growing sense of dread, he relogs to his machine self, noticing initially that his hands are bloody red, and then discovering a bloodbath of his wife and son. Devastated, he goes back at the station, where he faces David, who offers him a chair to come join him in hell.